Noah's fingers hovered over the dusty file. The faint hum of the office lights the only sound in the stillness. His heart raced as the name on the paper leapt out at him. A name from the past, from the darkest chapter of his life. He had spent years chasing this lead, and now it was within his grasp. Yet doubt gnawed at him. What if this was a trap? The air felt heavier, pressing in on him as he read further. His breath quickened. The walls of the small office seemed to close in. What was it they were hiding? The question burned in his mind. The deeper he dug, the more dangerous it seemed. But he couldn't stop now. The truth was just beyond his reach, and the cost of uncovering it didn't matter. A sudden creak from the hallway sent a chill through him. Was someone watching him? Noah sat back down at his desk, his mind racing. The shadow that had appeared in the doorway lingered in his thoughts. Was it a sign, or was he just imagining things? The paper in his hands trembled as he read the name again. His gut told him he was on the right track, but doubt still crept in. He glanced at the clock. Time was running out. He had to move quickly, but something told him that he wasn't the only one after the truth. Someone was watching, and they would stop at nothing to make sure he didn't find what he was looking for. Michael, a fellow detective, had warned him to back off, to let it go before it got worse. But Noah couldn't. Not when the answers were so close. He was in too deep now, and backing out was no longer an option. The truth was just beyond reach. But who else was searching for it? The air felt thick with anticipation as Noah picked up the phone. He had to call Michael. He had to know if his partner was still in. Noah had always trusted him, but things had changed. There was an edge to Michael now. Something different. A hesitation that Noah couldn't shake. The words, "back off," rang in his ears. But Noah didn't back off. Not anymore. The search for the truth had become an obsession, and it was too late to stop. Michael picked up after the third ring. "What do you need?" His voice was flat, distant. "We're in this together, right?" Noah asked, his grip tightening on the receiver. "Right," Michael replied, but the hesitation in his voice told Noah everything he needed to know. Noah felt the weight of his choices settle heavily on his shoulders. The shadows in his office seemed to grow longer, more oppressive. He had made his decision. There was no turning back, but the phone call with Michael had left a sour taste in his mouth. The reluctance in his partner's voice didn't sit well. Noah ran a hand through his messy hair, exhaling sharply. The investigation had led him here, but now it felt like the walls were closing in. The name on the paper wasn't just some cold case anymore. It was a thread that, if pulled, could unravel everything. He wasn't sure if he was ready for that, but he had no choice. He had to know the truth. Noah stood by the window, looking out at the darkened city. His mind raced, filled with thoughts of the investigation, the clues, and Michael's warning. The uncertainty gnawed at him, but there was no turning back. The truth was just within reach, but the cost of uncovering it felt more real with every passing moment. He had no idea what was waiting for him next, but he had to find out. The thought of the mystery, of what lay buried in the past, kept him awake. Was he prepared for what he would uncover? The streets were empty, save for the faint echo of Noah's footsteps. His breath was shallow, the cold night air biting at his skin. The clues from earlier were scattered in his mind, leading him through alleys and dark corners. His heart raced with a mixture of fear and excitement. The file in his hands felt heavier with each step. Was this the right direction? Was he getting closer to the truth? Or was he being lured into a trap? A sudden noise, footsteps behind him, made him stop. He turned sharply, but no one was there. The silence was deafening. Noah's pulse quickened. What if he wasn't alone in this anymore? His mind raced with the possibility of someone else searching for the same answers. Just ahead, a figure moved swiftly through the shadows. Noah's instincts kicked in. He followed. determined to find out who it was before they slipped away again. Noah leaned against the brick wall, his breath coming in heavy bursts. The chase had ended in a dead end, but the adrenaline still buzzed through his veins. He ran his hand over his face, the exhaustion sinking in. "What am I doing?" he thought. It felt as though he had been running for hours, though the night was still young. Michael's warning echoed in his mind, "Don't get too close to this." Noah scoffed under his breath, but there was no turning back now. The chase had already consumed him, and his questions were only getting louder. A few seconds of peace before the next storm. Noah looked over at Michael. Standing across from him, arms crossed. There was a tension between them. An unspoken friction. Michael's eyes were hard, though there was concern buried beneath. "We're not in this alone anymore," Noah said, his voice low. "Someone's after this too." Michael didn't respond, but the look in his eyes told Noah everything. As they stood in the alley, a figure stepped out of the darkness. Silent and controlled. Noah's heart skipped a beat. It wasn't a stranger. He knew this person. The figure stepped closer, a shadow among shadows. The air grew colder, tension thickening. Noah's hand instinctively reached for his gun. "You're digging too deep." The figure's voice was cold, almost mocking. "You won't like what you find." It was the keeper of secrets, the one who had been lurking just beyond the edges of the investigation. The silence was suffocating. The words hung in the air like an unspoken threat. "What's the end game here?" Noah demanded, stepping forward. "You'll see," the figure replied, disappearing back into the shadows. Noah's mind raced. He had just been warned, but the danger was now more real than ever. The quiet calm of the small cafe was a stark contrast to the tension Noah felt. He sat across from Michael, the smell of freshly brewed coffee filling the air, but he couldn't relax. Michael had been his ally for years, but now Noah wondered just how far they were from becoming enemies. "You need to stop," Michael said quietly, his voice carrying a weight Noah hadn't expected. "You're too close to something dangerous. You don't know who you're dealing with." Noah's gaze dropped to the table. Was Michael right? Could he back away now, knowing that the truth was within reach? But the idea of giving up gnawed at him. How could he let it go? Michael leaned forward, his face softening. "I'm telling you this because I care. Don't lose yourself to this obsession." Noah looked up, meeting Michael's eyes. There was a pause before Noah spoke, his voice steady. "I'm not backing down. Not now. I can't." The decision had been made, and Noah knew there was no going back. The night had fallen deep, and the city's streets seemed to close in on him as he left the cafe. He had a new lead, but the stakes had never been higher. He couldn't trust anyone now, not even Michael. Had he been manipulated all along? Noah's thoughts raced as he walked, each step heavy with doubt and determination. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A message. Just a time and location. The truth was getting closer, but so was the danger. He quickened his pace, the cold night air biting at his skin. He had a choice: face what he feared, or turn back and let the mystery consume him. But there was no turning back. The dim glow of the streetlights filtered through the fog as Noah walked, the night air thick with tension. He had just received a message, a new lead. A feeling of calm washed over him, the illusion of safety. But something felt off. He glanced over his shoulder, the hairs on the back of his neck standing up. Was he being followed? He shook off the thought and continued, but the unease lingered. Just ahead, a figure stepped from the shadows. It was a woman. Her features sharp and mysterious, her expression unreadable. She looked familiar, yet there was something unsettling about her presence. "You're on the right path," she said, her voice low and soothing, but the words didn't bring comfort. What was she hiding? Noah instinctively took a step back, but she held up a hand. "I can help you," she said, but her eyes never left his, calculating. Noah hesitated, sensing a hidden agenda, but the offer was too tempting to dismiss. Something wasn't right. Noah and the woman sat across from each other in a quiet cafe, the clinking of coffee cups the only sound breaking the silence. She had given him information, but the trust was fragile, like glass teetering on the edge of breaking. "You're making a mistake," she said, her voice softer now. "This won't end well." Noah stared at her, her words pulling him in. They shared a moment of vulnerability, the weight of the investigation wearing heavy on both of them. "I need to know the truth," Noah replied, his voice steady despite the turbulence inside. Her gaze softened, but there was a flicker of something. Fear? Regret? He wasn't sure. "Truth is a dangerous thing," she murmured, her eyes drifting away from his. Noah couldn't shake the feeling that she knew more than she was letting on, but for now, he chose to believe her. "If she was lying, you don't understand," the woman said, her voice rising slightly. "This is bigger than you think." Noah leaned forward, sensing her anxiety. "Then explain it to me." Her gaze shifted to the window, as if searching for something just out of sight. "You're too close," she warned, her hands shaking slightly. "They're watching." "Always watching." Noah narrowed his eyes, confusion mixing with suspicion. "Who?" he demanded. "You think you can change things? You can't. They're too powerful." Her words cut deep, but Noah didn't flinch. "I faced worse," he said, almost to himself. The woman looked at him, something like sorrow in her eyes. "You don't know what you're up against," she whispered. The silence between them grew heavy, but Noah wasn't ready to back down. Was this a warning, or a way to manipulate him? Noah stood in the darkened room, the message still burning in his hand. He had trusted her, believed her. But the betrayal hit him like a punch to the stomach. The door slammed shut behind him. His heart pounded. "You never stood a chance." Her voice echoed from the shadows, cold and unforgiving. He turned, but it was too late. The room seemed to close in around him as the figures emerged from the darkness. Had everything been a lie? The woman wasn't just a source of information. She was part of the web that had been weaving around him. "What do you want?" Noah asked, his voice shaking with disbelief. "What's the endgame?" The woman's eyes glinted in the dim light. "You were never meant to find the truth," she said, her words slicing through the air. Noah's breath caught in his throat as the realization hit him. She had played him from the start. "Eeyore, and Show, Tree, Kumel." The room was silent, except for the distant hum of the city. Noah's mind raced as he stared at the door, his heart heavy with the sting of betrayal. He had been so sure of his path, but now, with the weight of the truth pressing down on him, all he felt was the emptiness left by the woman's departure. What had he missed? His thoughts were jumbled, but one thing was clear: he couldn't trust anyone anymore. The people he had relied on were shadows, and now he was alone. A low growl of frustration escaped his throat. He had to move forward. He had no choice. The stakes were higher than ever. But how could he be sure of anything when everything had been a lie? He stood up, wiping his face with his hand. "It's not over," he muttered to himself, determination burning in his chest. He had to find the truth. The room was quiet. The weight of everything that had happened pressed down on Noah. His hands gripped the file tightly, his mind replaying the moments before the betrayal, trying to piece together the shattered fragments of his trust. The silence around him was deafening, broken only by the faint hum of the overhead light. It was as if the world had stopped, and Noah was left alone with his thoughts. The cool night air crept in through the cracked window, but it did nothing to calm the heat rising in his chest. He stood still for a long moment, thinking, waiting for something to click. Then it hit him, the one detail he had overlooked: the name. It wasn't just a clue, it was the key. A realization flooded his mind. This was bigger than he had imagined. Everything he had believed up until now was built on lies. The truth was within his reach, but how much of it could he bear? The memories hit him like waves crashing on the shore, disjointed, overwhelming. He remembered the first time he had encountered the woman. Her presence was magnetic, pulling him in with promises of answers, of truth. The air had been thick with tension, just like now. The conversation had seemed so innocent at first, but the cracks had been there all along. She had always known more than she let on, revealing only what she thought he needed to hear. But now, the truth about her, the truth about everything, was unraveling. The flashes of her words echoed in his mind. "You're too close," she had warned. "They'll never let you see the whole picture." She had been right. He had been blind, believing in a version of the truth that was false. The pieces were falling into place, but they led to something darker than he had imagined. No more lies. Noah's voice cut through the silence, a rasp of raw emotion. The woman stood before him, her expression unreadable. The room was cold, and Noah could feel the chill in his bones. "Why did you do it?" he asked, his voice trembling with both anger and disbelief. The woman didn't flinch. Her eyes met his, steady and unyielding. "Because you had to know," she said, her voice low, almost a whisper. Noah's heart skipped a beat. Her words were heavy, pregnant with meaning. The truth was worse than he could have imagined. He had been a pawn in a game much larger than he realized. His entire investigation had been manipulated, twisted. The woman wasn't the ally he thought she was. She had been working against him all along. "Who are you really?" Noah demanded, his breath shallow. The woman's calm demeanor never wavered as she stepped closer to him. "You don't understand," she said, her voice taking on a self-righteous edge. What we did was necessary." Noah took a step back, his mind spinning. "Necessary? For who?" he demanded, his voice rising. She looked at him with a pitying gaze. "For the greater good," she replied. Noah shook his head, disbelief flooding him. The greater good? He had always believed he was fighting for justice, for truth. But now he understood. There was no black and white, no simple right or wrong. The lines were blurred. The people he trusted were the ones who had deceived him. "You've been part of this from the start," she continued, her voice cold and confident. "You just didn't see it." The truth hit him like a punch to the gut. The world he thought he knew was a lie. Noah stood in the middle of the room, his mind racing as the truth settled in. It was like a weight he couldn't escape, pressing on his chest. So this was the truth all along. He whispered it to himself, as if saying it out loud could make it real. Everything he had believed was a lie. He felt broken, yet there was a sense of clarity that came with the realization. The pieces had finally come together, but at a great cost. He wasn't sure where to go from here, but one thing was certain. He would never be the same. The world around him felt different, like a veil had been lifted. But now, it only exposed the darkness beneath. "What now?" Noah whispered, more to himself than anyone else. The answer came quietly, buried deep in his heart. "Now, I fight." The room was silent, only the sound of breathing and distant footsteps breaking the stillness. Noah's heart raced as he prepared for the moment of collision. The floor beneath him was cold, the air heavy with anticipation. The flickering light overhead did nothing to calm his nerves. Every second felt drawn out, as though time itself was holding its breath. A noise from the darkness. Footsteps, slow but deliberate. Noah's eyes widened. The moment was here. No more running, no more secrets, just the inevitable clash. "You don't know what you're doing." A cold voice emerged from the shadows. Noah turned, eyes scanning the darkened room. "I know it's too late now," he shot back sharply. I have no choice. You always have a choice, came the voice. Its words were like daggers. Noah's grip tightened on his gun. The exchange became more intense, words cutting through the air like a battle. They were locked in a clash of beliefs, both certain that their way was right. Noah's steps quickened, the room closing in on them. You'll pay the price for this, the figure whispered as it stepped closer. The voice now almost a threat. A scream cut through the air as Michael, Noah's ally, fell to the ground, blood staining the cold floor beneath him. Noah's breath hitched. Why? He whispered, his voice trembling. Michael's eyes locked with his, full of pain and regret. It was the only way. You have to understand, he whispered. Noah's heart shattered as the weight of the moment hit him. His trust shattered in a single instant. The price of the battle was now clear. He had lost something far more precious than he realized. The fight wasn't just against the enemy. It was against everything he thought he knew. You never understood what was at stake, said the cold voice of the woman as she stepped out from the shadows. Noah stared at her, fury rising in his chest. I understand now, he replied, his voice steady. There's no choice anymore. You've always been a part of this game, she said with a smirk, the words biting. Noah hesitated for a moment, but then the realization hit. This wasn't just about the truth. It was about everything he had believed. All of it coming crashing down. It ends today, Noah said, his voice a low growl. It never really ends, she replied, her voice chilling. The final confrontation wasn't just a battle for the truth. It was a battle for everything he had ever known. The silence after the battle was deafening. Noah stood alone, his body and mind heavy with the aftermath of everything that had transpired. So, this was it all along, he murmured to himself. The weight of the truth settled in, the sacrifices made, the people lost, and the lessons learned. The pain was real, but there was something else now, a clarity, a purpose. The fight hadn't been in vain. The world had changed, and so had he. The loss was undeniable, but it had forged a new resolve in him. It's not over, he whispered, a promise to himself. The battle had been won, but the war was just beginning. The room was still. The air, once thick with tension and fear, now carried only the faint scent of smoke. Dawn light filtered in through the window, bathing the room in a soft golden glow. Noah stood motionless, taking in the quiet. The battle had ended, but the aftermath weighed heavily on his heart. The noise of the world had faded, leaving behind only the echoes of the past. Every breath felt like an effort. He looked around the room, the devastation clear in the wreckage of his life. There was nothing left to fight for. The losses were too great. But in the stillness, Noah realized what had truly been taken. The truth he sought had cost him more than he had ever imagined. What now? Noah sat on the edge of the bed, his gaze fixed on the floor. The weight of guilt pressed down on him like a physical force. Had he done enough? He closed his eyes, and the faces of those he had lost flashed in his mind. Michael, the mentor, the allies, all gone because of choices he made. A bitter taste rose in his mouth. It was all for the truth, wasn't it? But now, the truth felt hollow. He remembered the things he had said, the promises made, and the moments that led to this point. Life would never be the same again. The past was gone, and what lay ahead was uncertain. But Noah knew one thing for sure. He could never go back. He had changed. The door creaked open. Noah looked up, his heart racing. A figure stepped into the room. It was Michael, or at least it seemed to be him. His form was faint, like a memory, but the pain in his eyes was all too real. I'm sorry, Michael whispered, his voice a ghost of its former strength. Noah's breath caught in his throat. He stood slowly, unsure whether this was a hallucination or a moment of forgiveness. "I didn't mean for any of this." Michael's voice trembled. The room seemed to slow as Noah stepped forward, extending a hand, but the figure began to fade, like mist in the morning sun. "You didn't have to." Noah's voice faltered, and in that instant, he understood. Michael was gone, but the bond between them would never break. Noah found the letter on his desk, tucked away where it had been left long ago. It was from his mentor, the one who had taught him what it meant to fight for the truth. He opened it slowly, the paper crinkling in his hands. "You will never find peace in the answers," it read, "but you will find purpose in the search. Never forget that the greatest battles are those we fight within." The words echoed in his mind. They were his mentor's last gift, a reminder that the war wasn't over. Noah smiled softly, the tears threatening to fall, but he held them back. The past would always haunt him, but he could move forward now. The legacy of his mentor lived on in him. The world outside seemed to breathe. The pain of the past still lingered, but Noah felt something shift within him. He stepped out into the fresh morning air, the sky clear after the storm. "It's not over," he whispered, the weight of the battle still in his chest, but a new clarity in his eyes. "Now I understand." The lessons were hard-earned, but they had changed him. His hands were steady now, his heart no longer burdened by the same doubts. There was no more room for hesitation. What came next he would face with open eyes. He walked forward, embracing whatever came next. The room was still. The air, once heavy with chaos, now carried only the faintest sounds. The smoke had cleared, and the first light of dawn broke through the window, casting a quiet glow over everything. Noah stood motionless, feeling the silence settle around him like a blanket. The world seemed to have paused, holding its breath. The aftermath of everything that had come before weighed on him, but it was a weight he could now carry. He had lost so much. But what remained? The truth was clear now, but at what cost? The quiet felt deafening, and the questions lingered. Was it worth it? Noah moved slowly, his footsteps almost inaudible on the cold floor. The weight of the past seemed to follow him, but he kept walking. There was no turning back now. As he passed the remnants of the life he once knew, he felt a sense of finality. A deep breath, and then he continued, each step carrying him further from what was lost. He looked back one last time, but there was no going back. The past had dissolved, and the future awaited. What was left now was acceptance. He was ready. The voice was faint at first, like a whisper from a memory. "You fought well," Michael's voice echoed softly in Noah's mind. The memory of his fallen ally surfaced, bringing both comfort and pain. Noah stopped for a moment, feeling the weight of his absence. He closed his eyes, letting the memory flood over him. "I wish you could have been here to see it," Noah whispered to the empty room. The words were bittersweet, but there was peace in them now. Michael was gone, but his influence remained. He had helped Noah become who he was. The world moved on. People came and went, and the rhythms of life returned. The sun rose higher, casting a warm light on the streets below. The world, though changed, kept turning. Noah walked through it, but everything felt different now. He was different. The faces of the people around him were unfamiliar, and yet he felt a strange sense of connection. Everything had shifted. What once seemed impossible was now a reality he could face. He was ready to let go, to embrace whatever came next. The past was part of him, but it didn't define him anymore. Noah stopped by the window, looking out at the city. The world stretched before him, full of possibilities. A deep breath escaped him, the weight of everything he had gone through settling into a quiet acceptance. "It's over now," he whispered softly to himself. There was no more anger, no more questions, just peace. The journey had brought him here. And now, he was ready to move forward. The echoes of the past would always linger, but they no longer held him. Truth must never be owned.